go to the lake and shoot some content. Pray to that water just to free my conscience. Well, I worked all week. Today, Friday. I was there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I put in 5 days there and back. And after 5 days at this new company, it's a new job, but it's the same problems. I mean, after living the way I've living, a big thing I wanted to do, I was looking forward to being at work, was having access to a microwave, being able to, finally eat some hot food. Me, I've been eating cold soup out the can, sandwiches, cold cuts, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna make use of the microwave. But me personally, I try to stay away from microwave food. I really, prefer something cooked. So since we wasn't doing nothing, I wasn't actually working. What this week was dedicated to was just strictly book work. So I would just sit in this room that they got, basically the kitchen. And we'd be there 8 hours, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So I figure if I'm finna just be sitting here for 8 hours just doing book work, studying, I brung my little crock pot in there. And, I had like hot dogs in the crock pot, sausages, stuff like that. And they don't know my struggle. They don't know that I'm living homeless, living on the streets. They don't know what I've been going through, which it's none of their business. But they was looking at me crazy, for the crock pot. Not necessarily the managers, but just the other people that work there. They crack jokes and, act like they never seen a crock pot at work before. And when I step out the room to go to the office or go use the bathroom, I know they laugh behind my back and say little things. And I'm just like, what's the big deal with a crock pot? Maybe I'm not seeing it, but if it was the other way around and I saw somebody, just cooking in the crock pot while they was at work, I really wouldn't question it. I wouldn't think nothing of it. But I don't think they like me. It's a new job, but after being there 5 days, I don't think that they like me. I don't think they like my character. Every morning I come in, they looking at me crazy, giving me, side looks. It's just everything about me nobody seemed to like, no matter where I go. So I didn't bother nobody. I just, sat at the table and just studied my material like I was instructed to do by my superiors. And I know that, my body wasn't smelling good, and that's really not it really was out of my control due to my circumstances. I mean, I bought alcohol, I bought wipes, and, I had a little bit of body spray, and, I did the best I could before I would go in there. But, after, going like a month and a half without a shower, the wipes can only do so much. So, I tried to conceal it as much as I could, but even, sitting there, I could smell myself. And, I'm not happy with it, but, I had to go to work to try to make the money so that I could, better my conditions. And people, they just didn't understand. So, they was feeling some type of way about me cooking in the crock pot. And, you know, we were in the kitchen. There's like a conference table in there with chairs. So, it wasn't, nothing out of the ordinary. I couldn't afford to really eat out. And me personally, I don't like eating out. But, I was just making some food while I was sitting there doing my studies. And then, as I would have conversations with management, they would overhear, and they could tell by the way I spoke to my superiors that, I'm somewhat educated. I'm not a rocket scientist or nothing like that, but, they could see I spoke with intelligence, I spoke with honor, I spoke with integrity. And it seemed like that made my coworkers not care for me even more. So I really went in there, did the best I could, didn't cause no trouble, didn't mess with nobody, just kind of stayed to myself. There was one guy I talked to because I felt like he was worth talking to. I could feel his spirit. I was like, this is a good guy right here. So, we had a couple conversations, but as far as the others, I could tell by the energy, that these really weren't my type of people. So I kept my conversations real brief and short when I would have to interact with them. But it wasn't disrespectful or shady or nothing like that. It was just, brief and short. Because I'm not a fake person. If I know that somebody don't care for me or the way they treat me, I feel like is in a way that I wouldn't treat them, then that's going to make me kind of shy away from you in any situation, whether it's, professionally or personally. But, man, I'm just, at the end of the week, I'm just thinking here we go again. A new job, but the same old problems, the same treatment. And then, I'm sick. I've been living with this infection since basically Thanksgiving. And I had to kind of go 4 months without getting it treated because I was afraid that it would interfere with me making money donating plasma. So, I just stuck the infection out. So, as you know, I went to the hospital last week to finally, get it looked at. And they put me on, some medication, some antibiotics. So, my mouth is leaking. And it kind of, since pus is basically coming out of my mouth, it's causing bad breath. So I had my COVID mask on while I would be there. And before the day kicked off on Monday, my first day, my hiring manager and, my superiors that I report to, I let them know what I was going through, that I had a serious bacterial infection and that, I'd be kind of messed up for the next 10 days while I take the medication. So, they understood, but, it caused my nose to be running a lot and I got to constantly blow my nose. So, since Monday, there's this one white guy. He started before me. But ever since Monday, he never speaks. He just looks at me really weird. I'll have my head down and just be studying my books. And then I'll look up and he'll be across the room, just looking at me, just sitting in his seat, just with a blank stare looking at me. He never speaks or nothing. So, I was kind of uncomfortable with that. I was thinking in my head, what's this dude's deal? And then today, out of nowhere, I'm sitting at the table and I look up and he's right in front of me. So there's ink pens all over the office, all over the room. There's actually a table with a cup full of ink pens, pencils, and markers. So I look up, he's right in front of me, standing over the table, standing over me. And I had my highlighter in my hand as I was reading the book, and I had my ink pen sitting on my notepad. So I look up, he's standing right over me. He grabs the ink pen and he says, I need to use this ink pen for a second. So he picks up the ink pen, grabs it, jots something down real quick, and then like slams it back on the table and then just walks off. So I'm thinking like, that's weird. Like, that's kind of disrespectful. But I know that like the world is trying to get me to like pop off. So I was uncomfortable with it. I kind of wanted to address it, but I checked myself in my head. I said, I'm not going to fall for this again, because my last, 3 jobs, I feel like I've been baited by like white guys, and whenever I respond, it falls back on me and I end up suffering. So I said, I'm not going to let this happen this time. So then he goes back across the room and he's, sitting there doing his thing. So about 10 minutes later, I get up to grab some tissue and I sit back down and, I blow my nose. I'm blowing my nose, wiping my nose. And then out of nowhere, he says, what's your problem? You just sick all the time? You always blowing your nose, wiping your nose? And then he says, and just like laughs and looks at me crazy. And I just look at him, but I don't say nothing. I'm like, okay, here we go again. Like, I don't want to label him as racist because, I hate doing that. I don't want to call somebody that unless, that's really what it is, unless I have concrete proof. But I'm like, what is it? And then the funny thing is, he coughs and sneezes and blows his nose more than me. All week I've noticed he'll periodically like pull out like 2 prescription bottles full of pills, and he'll be like taking them, and he blows his nose and coughs more than me. So when he said that, I was thinking in my head, okay, what's the big deal? Everybody here knows I'm sick. They see me taking my medication. I explained to my managers what was going on. Why is it a problem with you? And then on top of that, you in here blowing your nose and coughing more than me. But you say that to me. So I'm like, all right, here we go again. Like, it's just like, no matter what I do, no matter where I go, it's just like some force that's like just trying to pick me apart and tear me down. So after that, there's another room that you can go in. So I just like gathered my belongings and went to the other room, the testing room. So there was no one in there. So, I sat down, and this day, Friday, like, I didn't even bring the crock pot today. I just had a bag of cheap Doritos. They're not Doritos. They like cheap tortilla chips. I call them Temu Doritos. So, I just had those. That was all I had to eat. It was really all I could afford. I didn't even have any money to buy anything to cook in the crock pot since, I lost my Quest card. I still haven't gotten a replacement yet. So, so I go in the room by myself and I'm just in there just studying because I got to take the test next week. So, I just kind of wanted to just like be in a quiet place where I could just study and be left alone. And they had an issue with that. I could hear them like, laughing and giggling outside of the room. So then after about an hour, they come in there and sit where I'm at and start, everybody's like sitting at the table with me now. So I'm minding my business, attending to my studies, and I open up the bag of chips and I put 2 chips in my mouth and start chewing. And then there's this other black guy in there. He's 45 years old. He just got out of prison, and I heard him explaining all this to one of the other guys. So he never spoke, never introduced himself, nothing, never built a rapport with me. But when I started chewing the chips, he looked up and was like, "Man, I don't like you." And then I said, "Well, you ain't the only one, So I don't know what that was about, but I'm like, I'm not finna pop off in this place of business. This is my job. I really, need this job like more than any of them would know. I got this tire that's about to pop on me at any moment. I don't have a donut. I don't have a spare. So if this goes out, my transportation is pretty much gone. I've been wearing the same clothes for months because I'm locked out of my storage, which has my other clothes in there and other things I need. So, I'm just really trying to just chill out and just work this job. And then I found out that I'm not even getting a paycheck April 12th because everybody got paid today, and we get paid every 2 weeks. So when the manager interviewed me, he must have got the pay dates wrong, because in my interview he told me if I started March 31st that I'd get a 1 week check, which would be April 11th. So now it's not going to even be April 11th. It's going to be the following week. So I'm just sitting here like, geez, man, I already told the storage that I would pay them on this day. So because I'm going to probably get a check a week later, it's going to cost more than $400 now, because they keep adding fees every day I'm late. This storage is so janky, like, wow. So, at the end of the day, it's just like I gave it my all, and I still, receive hatred, and now I gotta be broke and struggle for another week. So I don't even know how I'm gonna really get there. It's not on the bus line. I mean, I'll walk if I have to, but realistically it's not walking distance. I just was like, man, I'm tired. I haven't really gotten much sleep because I'm running out of spots to kind of park and sleep in the city. So I was like, let me just come down to the lake here. This is probably a place where I can be left alone. And it's something about the water that just calms me. Like Tupac said in one of his songs on Until the End of Time, he said, "For quiet times, disappear, listen to the ocean. Smoke my porch, think my thoughts, then it's back to coasting." So, I just wanted to come to the lake, shoot some content and, let the water just clear my conscience. Because it's just been a rough week. And I don't know what the next week is going to hold for me. So it's the weekend. I'm off Saturday and Sunday. I have to be back Monday at 8 a.m. So, I'm just kind of hoping just to, just get some rest and just kind of just cleanse my soul, cleanse my spirit, free my mind up. And, I just wonder why, why everywhere I go, people just have a problem with me. And I kind of projected myself outside of myself while I was at work, and I assessed these 5 days, and what I concluded was that I'm just a strong individual. You know what I'm saying? Like, regardless if I have money or don't, regardless if I have shelter or I'm homeless, like regardless of what I'm going through, the way I walk, the way I carry myself, you could see that I'm a strong individual. You could see that I'm really trying to do the right thing in life. I'm respectful. I'm considerate. I'm well-mannered. When I wake up, I always say my prayer to the Lord, and it's short and simple, but this is something I came up with. I always say, God, please keep me handsome and well-mannered. And I try to, carry that with me everywhere I go. I don't know about the handsome part, but I definitely got the well-mannered part down packed. And once again, I got to take it back to Tupac. In an interview, he said, I feel like I'm cursed, every time I try to get ahead or do something positive, it's just some evil shit that just won't let me go, that just keep pulling me back, won't let me be free. And once again, that's how I'm feeling again. It's like I start this new job, I'm giving it my all, and once again, I'm just met with just evil, just hatred. So, will I ever get to a place of peace? Will I ever get to that level where I can just be left alone? I must be one of the special ones, because I'm constantly attacked everywhere with everything. Even when I went to donate plasma, people go in there, they donate plasma, they engage in toxic conversations, they be rude to the employees, they be demanding. I go in there, I'm quiet, I'm cordial. Even when I feel like I'm getting unfair treatment, I don't even jap out. I just kind of hold it in until, it works itself out. But I go to the plasma place with good intentions, and you saw my video how they just left me bleeding there and just ignored me, didn't tend to me for 10 minutes, just left me hanging. So it's just I don't know, is it like this invisible force over me that just, it's like a dark cloud that's just following me, that I can't see? But it's just here we go again. So I'm gonna stick the job out because I've already invested my time and energy into it. Plus, I really need this paycheck to get this storage open and to get another tire and to get my YMCA membership paid off so I can start taking a shower and cleaning myself. Wipes only go so far. I can smell my hair. It needs to be shampooed. I really need a shower, so I can't clean everything with the wipes. So this weekend, I'm just going to study for my test, but I'm going to fill out other applications and try to find work elsewhere because, I just feel like that they're going to give me the short end of the stick. And what I know with companies, when they don't like you personally, no matter if you can do, I bet you, if I had any money, I'd bet my last dollar that I can do the job better or just as good as their top employee that they have now. But when you work for these companies and they don't like you personally, they really don't want you there as an employee, even if you are a good employee. So, my creed on life, my personal way of doing things has no effect on how good of an employee I would be. But, I just know that when companies don't like you, they try to mess with you and, they may even get rid of you. So just in case that's the case, I'm going to start putting in applications and, try to find some work elsewhere. Just in case they do decide to, mess with me further or let me go. And who knows, next week can be more challenging than this week. So, it's just I gave it all to God. I did my best, but once again, I'm back it's like I'm in the same boat. I just can't be free. So, that's where I'm at with things now. But I'm not depressed. You know, I'm not going to be mad at the world. I'm still going to open doors for people and smile and, you know, be that good person that I know I am deep down inside and even on the surface. So, you know, it hurt my feelings. I ain't going to lie. And, but what can you do, you know, but just keep pressing on. So I guess this is just adding to the strength that I already have. You know, I won't let this situation make me weaker. I'll just, you know, get stronger from it. But I'm proud of myself. I haven't smoked weed. It feels so good to be just free of that. I broke those chains. It feels good to be able to go and pass my own drug test and not have to swap piss like I did back in December. And you know, I'm proud of myself for even going in there hungry, you know, with these challenging circumstances. And even though, you know, I wasn't smelling the best, I did the best I could, and I still showed up and did the job. So, you know, this ain't my fault at all. But, you know, looking back on things, I'm not making excuses, but it's never my fault. You know, like, I go to work and mind my own business, but people just can't seem to do the same. So once again, it's on. Once again, it's on.